Thanks for joining us today. Well, we've got quite a few participants here. Uh, okay. Hey, everyone. So welcome to Disruptive Doctors special live webinar. So I'm Dr. Selina. I'm the co-founder of Disruptive Doctors. Disruptive Doctors is actually a platform for doctors to impact healthcare differently. Okay, I'm going to try something here. Can I know how many of you guys here are doctors? Like, if you could just raise your hand. Okay, a doctor here. Okay, thank you. Okay, so today we have something very special today. So we're diving into the H-Innovators Challenge. This is an incredible initiative by Disruptive Doctors aimed at sparking innovation in healthcare. Now, before we dive into the details, I would like to set the stage for our viewers today. So the H-Innovators Challenge is a unique opportunity for doctors to collaborate with non-healthcare professionals and also for non-healthcare professionals to collaborate with doctors to bring their healthcare innovation ideas to life. Now, but we understand there might be some confusion or hesitation about what this challenge is all about, who should join, what kind of ideas are suitable. And that's exactly why we're here today. That is to clear those doubts and inspire you, all of you, our audience, to take that plunge. And also to give you guys a taste of what the H-Innovator Challenge is all about. So, okay, so I just wanted to share with you guys like how Disruptive Doctors, myself and my co-founder, Dr. Vivek, how we came about with this H-Innovator Challenge. So a couple of years ago, actually many years ago, I was a medical doctor working in KKM in the Ministry of Health. Now, I was an NS medical officer, so I worked in the ICU, right? So in the ICU, we have this very huge chart. This is a 24-hour chart, right? This 24-hour chart has so many functions, right? It's to help us identify what is wrong with the patient in split seconds. Like I can look at it, I can even trace back a couple of hours to maybe days to see what actually happened to the patient. Like I can tell a story by looking at the chart, right? So that's the purpose of a chart. So as I was moving from one hospital to another, when I was at this one particular hospital, they didn't have this chart. So what happened was they decided to buy the software and use it in the ICU. And this chart was digitized, right? This huge chart. It was chopped up into 24 pieces. So I can only see like one small frame at any given time. So it was very difficult for us to do our job because I cannot really see the whole story, right? Looking at the chart with the chopped up chart. So what happened was one day a patient collapsed. When this patient collapsed, no one could tell what was going on with her because, hey, there's no chart. There's only this small little frame. So everyone had to stop what they were doing. Everyone picked a computer and we tried to piece everything together to find out what actually happened to this patient, right? It was 10 minutes. 10 minutes in the ICU is like eternity just to figure out what's going on with the patient, right? So that's when I realized that the danger of, implementing a technology, a software, when you don't really know what it's supposed to take over, right? So that's when I saw like, hey, there's actually a lot of danger in here. And I realized that doctors may have the ideas, right? Maybe an engineer just saw, oh, it's a chart, let's digitize it, right? So there was no collaboration, there was no connection. Like the person who developed this probably did not get any input from the right medical practitioner at that time. And then he develops this and somehow he just managed to make its way into the hospital. So that was why, that's how this whole challenge came about. It's really to bring about collaboration, to bring about disruptive innovation that's going to improve healthcare on a whole. So that's my story, how we came up with this challenge. So one of the topics we're going to be covering during the H-Innovators Challenge is design thinking. And joining us today to talk about design thinking is a very special guest and also one of our partners, a very important partner in this challenge. Bikesh, the founder and CEO of 133 Ventures and Lead Academy. Welcome, Bikesh.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us, Bikesh. So maybe I'll pass the floor to you to get started with what we're about to do today.
All right, let me just share my slides and off we go. So good evening, everyone. As Dr. Selina said, my name is Bikesh, founding partner of Lead Ventures. I mean, we're geeks, so we spell things with digits. 1337 is LEET. It means the best in our tech world, and hence why our whole premise of being a venture capital firm in Malaysia is to invest into the best minds. So we're quite agnostic in the sectors we invest in. We've invested in health tech, we've invested in fintech, we've invested in social enterprises. As long as we find amazing people with amazing ideas, we love to be the first check into them. Hence why we teamed up with Disruptive Doctors to say that we wanted to build a bigger portfolio within the health space. And what better way to start than investing in doctors that have great ideas or hearing out great ideas doctors have and see how we could help you take those ideas to products to customers to scale. Hence why the whole accelerator was something we wanted to work together on. But before we get into that, let's kind of talk about the topic today, which is design thinking. I think as people within domains of expertise, there's always a certain point you come across like, why isn't this done? Why isn't that done? So the whole art of problem solving or the methodology in problem solving has a formal definition, has a formal methodology, and one of it is called design thinking itself. It's a bit more structured in terms of its approach. The whole idea of it being structured is to kind of defer a couple of biasness. Let's kind of just try that experiment now. So if I had this statement here and I said, what comes to mind if I say design a wallet? I hope all of you are going to basically respond either through chat or if you want, turn on your microphone and video and basically tell me, when I say design a wallet, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Or what would you design if I asked you to design a wallet?
Hi guys, anyone?
We'll start with Dr. Selina. Designing a
Okay.
wallet, Selina. What are you going to think about?
What am I going to think about? I'm going to think about what it looks like, the color, um, how big, how small. Okay,
Okay.
someone mentioned here electronic wallet.
A wallet to hold money, credit cards, etc. Yeah, a wallet. So what's first thing that comes to mind if I say design a wallet? What do you picture? What would you design?
Okay, someone says shape.
All right. So what would be the shape that comes to your mind, Gayatri?
Yun Kwon says look, size, color, pattern, price, including target audience.
All right. All right. We've got some good thinkers here. So some people are saying, all right, letter wallet that folds, heart shaped. So yeah, heart shaped, pretty cool. How can I be different with a wallet? Yeah, so everyone has a different take on stuff, right? So some of you described this, the one that said leather wallet, folding kind of stuff. This is your typical one. Some of you may be thinking something like this. Some of you might be thinking like this, saying wallet, who carries the wallet? An electronic wallet. So it's going to be on my phone. It's going to be an app. But if it was a phone, I needed to carry a couple of supplement things like a business card or a credit card, a debit card, then hey, a MagSafe to your phone, assuming everyone's an iOS user for some reason, this basically would make sense. So that's the thing, right? What if I then said like the wallet that you designed was the person sitting next to you or virtually above you in this participant chat? Then you go like, not necessarily what you thought would be an ideal wallet was ideal for somebody else. I think that's the issue we see today, right? So the key thing, I think some of you kind of hinted like, how can I be different? Is it an electronic wallet? You are asking questions. So the key thing is, of course, to ask the why. Like, why am I creating a wallet? Who is the wallet for? Hence why when it comes to problem solving and it comes to people creating solutions, the typical problem solving always takes somebody's own opinion and they use their own experience to basically guide them. So that can be a good thing, that can be a bad thing, right? Because if you're not from the right space, you don't speak the right people, you're not really on the ground, the perception of how you're trying to solve it is what you think needs to be solved. So you're making a lot of assumptions here. And that's not necessarily the best thing. Like this, the person that worked for Otis might have a clear idea which was going up, which was going down. Hence why if you walk into most malls, of course, you'll always see both buttons clicked. Either they don't know which is which, or they just want the lift to basically show up. But the idea is, people just take their own experiences thinking, I know, and I assume you would know which specific button was up, which specific button was down. Same thing goes with this person that basically, that built, we missed out a little animation, but what was it here was there was a accessibility button, and then if you click on it, it basically opens up a door to a stairwell. So yeah, intention was great. We're building accessibility in mind, but to a stairwell, what were you thinking about that, right? So design is not just about how things looks like or how it feels like. Design is also about how it works. And a famous saying that was by Steve Jobs. So how do you basically build form and function into things? Let's have an example here when we talk about design thinking. What if I said, this remote control is something most modern households basically have. If you have a typical smart TV today, you have a remote that has just too many buttons. If I said design this remote control for your grandmother, what would be your solution? How would you build a remote control for the elderly or for the aged?
Probably just one button.
One button. And what does that one button do, Selina?
I guess I'll probably have to simplify this. There's just too many buttons.
Yeah, yeah. So we've got someone saying you could just have a turn on and turn off. I guess that could be really simple with a volume rocker. So if it's always going to be on the typical channel you always watch, in this case, I mean, who even watches channels? It's just going to be on your Netflix. So that one button is more like a navigation remote control that has directional up and down to browse. That could be it. Anyone else? Voice activated.
Voice activated.
That depends. We're going to understand all kinds of languages, all kinds of tone. What if someone is, having difficulties in speech? Because we are talking about the elderly, doesn't really guarantee a solution. Big buttons. I like that one. All right, big buttons. Yeah, because you assume that it's going to be difficult to basically hold in your hands. The buttons are so close apart. If you're trying to actually punch in digits, you could press the wrong one. Most people have the issue with phones. So eventually, if I say I want to prototype something like this, everything can be started something really simple, right? I could take this typical remote control that you could buy in Shopee for really cheap, and I could just take away the noise, as Dr. Selina, you were saying this now. I'll just eliminate buttons. And I could do that just with this. Take a piece of paper and wrap it and saying, all you need is the power, the volume rocker, the program rocker. I mean, if you wanted to put a keypad, I could get rid of that. And it still gave you the same effect of saying, take away the noise, just show me what I basically need. I think that's something that sometimes we forget as we build solutions, we come up with ideas. How do you basically just know what matters to the person? And that's the key thing with design thinking, right? Knowing what the person wants. But then again, when you talk to some of these geniuses with products out there, they come and tell you that it doesn't make sense. Steve Jobs had this famous quote saying, people don't know what they want until they show it to them. I'm like, how would you do a survey or basically ask someone if they want an iPod or they want an iPhone, right? What would be the words you would use to describe that? And if you go a little bit more back, you would hear the same words came out of Henry Ford. And he said, if I asked people what they wanted, they would have said they wanted faster horses, because maybe the concept of automotives was not the vocabulary everybody has. Same thing back when the iPhone launched, 2007, talk about a ubiquitous computing device with everything in one. I mean, who would use such terms? So sometimes the key is not about asking what they want, but finding out the reasons why. If you ask about what's the issue that's pertaining today, why a certain approach? So in this case, if they did say, I want faster horses, you ask them, why faster horses? And they would explain that, because it's pretty difficult to go across Trans-America from one side to one side. A horse would freaking die if I basically even attempted such long journeys. So if I had a faster horse, probably I had better chances making it to the destination I wanted. So then so it's about getting A to B in a faster time span. That's what you want. So mobility, of course, they might not even have the word mobility then, but at least you know what was the issue people faced, and then you brainstorm were there different ways to basically solve for A to B without having faster horses itself, right? So the key is always asking the right questions. And that's something that it sounds so obvious, but not everyone basically knows the obvious sometimes. So within the whole process of design thinking, we'll formally talk about those actual steps later on. But the core part of it is called empathy. And empathy, I mean, as doctors, I'm sure we know what this means. It's like, how do you put yourself in your patient's shoes, like, bedside manner to some extent, and ask the question, of course, why? Why? How do you basically get to the actual root cause of an issue? If you ask the questions, why, enough of times, you basically kind of find out the root cause of different things. And then you basically know, like, so these are the pain points you're basically facing. This is what you're thinking. This is what you're feeling. These are the motivations that drive your behaviors. And that's totally what makes two kind of companies apart, right? A good company and a great company. A great company knows beyond just the reasons of why, what goes down is they build the whys, the thoughts and emotions a person has to make it a little bit more special and a little bit more a reason why someone would leave a competitor and come over to yours. So, things like a customer persona, a customer journey may not be words that you're familiar with, but eventually what we do in product design is kind of get under your skin and truly understand what it takes to make you basically have these motivations driven itself, right? Is it more on a business owner that's chasing the bottom lines and top lines? But what is it that truly makes you get that bottom lines and top lines more apparent itself? And how do we basically give you the tools to make that apparently happen? So when you get down this particular user journey, and you cover thoughts and emotions, it becomes a very powerful thing to make them have a positive experience around your products itself. So in the banking sector, especially now as everybody moves to a digital realm, you're always trying to figure out, why are people still coming to the branch? Why do people still want to queue up when you can do pretty much everything online, and the people still in branches that they basically have to serve? Why aren't they using the mobile apps? So as you ask these right questions and figure out what are their thoughts and emotions, it could be because of a certain age group, and just we think it's user friendly, but user friendly is the most ambiguous word you could use, because user friendly to you doesn't mean user friendly to someone visually impaired, someone more age or differently abled. So it's some things that you have to basically get down and ask questions, why, to get to that pain points, right? So again, when you build products, eventually, you can't just say one size fits all, build something, ship it, click the button, buy Facebook ads, and assume people in the loads, in the thousands and the hundreds of thousands that discover your existence and start buying. So if you look at the adoption cycle, it looks like a normal curve. And there are groups of people who will really love things that are unproven, and we call them innovators or early adopters. The fact that you're on this call, you'd be one of those crazy people to buy crazy things in its initial points, initial forms, and basically say that, yeah, I'm sure it's going to get better, but let's basically give it a chance right now. If it doesn't work out, you'll be fine waiting for updates or ways that will come up with new ways for you to try things on an existential platform. So the key is, how do you target this early adopters and know who they are? Where do they exist? So if I'm selling to doctors, who would be other doctors that are innovative enough to basically want to try and experiment in new things? Then eventually, as the adoption gets a little bit more mature, it kind of moves across to mainstream market. Now, there's a book written about this. It was called Crossing the Chasm. Really good book. What they basically talked about was, it's not a seamless curve. So we talk about early adopters, where we talk about this innovators and early adopters up here for the early market. There's considerably a gap between them and mainstream market. And this is the average person, all the other doctors, all the other farmers, all the other accountants, all the other everyone that you would mass market on Facebook or Google Ads itself, where there's intent to buy. And if you basically don't do it right, you're going to fall through this gap. So basically, you're here, you're building something brand new that maybe doesn't really have a market yet. You should be trying to figure out, as innovators, how to find other people like me that would give my new crazy product a chance, or even some of these people up here in the early adopters. But you're so concerned about being here saying, I need this to be a viable business. Hence, I need big numbers. I need to get to everyone to basically buy this for me. So you're creating campaigns to target people at this point of that curve itself, but only then to get nowhere because you fall within that gap as you try and inch towards this, but you forget about this gap. So clearly, when you build products, the key thing when we think about customers, it's not just customers, it's early adopters that you basically got to figure out. Who would be these doctors or health professionals or potential patients that may want to give things a try before it goes to mainstream? So within the design thinking process, there's just a structured way to make you think that way, and how to force you to say, don't just jump to conclusions and think of ideas, but put yourself in a customer's shoes. Empathy. How do you basically practice that? What are tools you could use to practice that, from observation techniques, interview techniques, questions to ask, questions not to ask, what are leading questions, what are not leading questions, questions that frame a biasness of you basically trying to push an agenda. All that needs to be defined and understood so that you get to appreciate the process and pause before you just start coming up with ideas to solutions itself. And once that's basically done, then you go into what we call the define process. And the define process talks about, so what is it that we're actually trying to solve? Once you kind of uncover all the layers with all those whys you can ask in the empathy process, it allows you to really define what we call point of view. In short, some people call it a problem statement, but we try and have this really positive tone when we do design thinking. So we rather call it a POV. What's the point of view? The point of view basically is between the user, the need, and some insights you have. I'll talk about this later on. And then finally, you come up with different ideas in terms of saying, so how can we do it better? What are different ways you could do it? Doesn't matter whether it sounds far-fetched or not. Come up with as many crazy ideas as possible from a brainstorming process, only then to figure out how to prioritize, pick a couple of things, and then saying, what do we do? Let's go build it. And when you build it, you don't have to build a complete full-blown solution. It could be half-baked to an extent. We call it a prototype. Put it in people's hands. Try and basically do some iterations in terms of revisions over and over and get the customers to give you feedback. So that whole prototype and test, sort of like a loop that basically happens until it's good enough for you to move into the next cycle itself. And if things doesn't work out, go back to the drawing board. So this structured process gets you to pause and think before you jump to conclusions and come up with ideas and solutions itself, right? So people always think design thinking is, the word design makes you think that this is a process for designers, the creative, the marketeers. So if I had a business division with biz dev and CEO and sales, that's one. I've got a tech team, and I need to have a design team that focuses on design thinking. But it's not true. It's not true at all. Design thinking should be something that encompasses an entire organization. That means the way you design, if you had marketing, etc., the way you think about the customer, the way you sell to the customer, the way you build for the customer. Design thinking basically affects everyone. So because if you put yourself in the customer's shoes, from selling to building to, in between the marketing aspects, everything thinks about the customer, and hence the words you use, the forms you create. I mean, we've all been patients, right? The whole experience of sitting there waiting, filling up the most obvious things over and over again in multiple copies. Why on earth do we do that? Just because it's been so, it always will be so. So with design thinking being used, we start thinking about this, saying, what are they thinking and feeling as they go through this process? Is there a better way? So everyone in an organization should have design thinking. It's the topic that we think everyone should basically learn. Then eventually when you come back to the business, so business is made out of a couple of things, right? One core business section, which talks about the viability of a business. When we say viability, we mean how do you even prove it's a business? So the market is big enough, there's a business model you can sell, that's great. And then there's the feasibility in terms of how are you going to put this out there? Who are the competitors? What else are they doing? What technologies are you using? Is it feasible? Do we have the tech to basically make it happen? So those two aspects are always there. But what sometimes we really have to focus on is on the human aspect. And that's where design thinking comes in. When we think about the customer again, it's not just about our shareholders, board members, the wrong stakeholders. Your true stakeholders are the patients, are the actual customers, right? So how do you make things that are more desirable? And that's the only way when you think like them, you put yourself in their shoes. So if you look at all this particular kind of business model design solutions out there, there's a couple in the market, right? One of it's called BMC, the Business Model Canvas. Now, I'm not going to actually talk about it, but I just want to show you that all these business planning tools, if you kind of break it down, it becomes the same areas. We talk about what makes a product desirable, what makes a product feasible, what makes a product viable. Same aspects we speak about in design thinking. The more digital guys, girls will basically also use something called the lean canvas. That basically is a quicker approach on how to get a product out into market. Same thing, you could slice and dice that, and it has the same aspects: what's desirable, what's viable, and what's feasible itself. So eventually, if you look at these particular design templates on business models itself, there is an element of design thinking itself. I mean, nobody maybe intentionally engineered it in, but just because it makes sense, it kind of falls into place. So this is a quick overview of that, right? So if you follow these particular steps, when you fill up a canvas like this, again, the canvas doesn't really go kind of sequential in left to right, right to left. It kind of jumps about. But what it says is think about your customers first, then think about what problems they have. What could be the approach of the solution? How you're different from everything else in terms of that idea, and how would you get it into people's hands? So it kind of follows the design thinking principle of saying, in terms of customer segments, empathy. Put yourself in the customer's shoes and try and figure out which is the actual customer. And then comes the whole definition of the problem, the point of view. So what are the key things that's basically, challenging to them or an opportunity in the current moment for this particular segment of the market? And then you come up with the ideas in terms of, what are different ways we could solve for it? And then the value proposition is when you try and put something in your hands, like, is this something people want? Are they buying the value of what we're trying to build? And finally, to kind of test it, you have to put it in your hands, and you need to know the channels that basically allow this to basically happen. So very similar from business model in today's world in digital products, like using lean canvases, and to the design thinking principles, we find that it's very noticeable itself. Even in the older ones, business model canvas, very noticeable. It talks about these three aspects itself. So end of the day, there's a shift in terms of how you should think, right? The typical thinking for businesses will say, I have many problems. Let's shove it all into one solution. Hence why, if you saw solutions back then, big, bulky, big enterprise systems, monolithic, everything shoved into one. That's what it typically looked like. But with design thinking, we kind of say, before we even talk about a problem, let's step back as a process before for us to understand and think in a more objective way in terms of, why is this all happening? And then when you look at the problems, don't ever think it's, one size fits all. It could be, we need many different solutions. We need many different solutions for the many different problems. Some of them could be addressed with one solution, some another. Some may be saying, maybe the problem was us. No one said innovation was always about creating something bright and shiny, right? It's not about that. Innovation could also say, take a step back and see whether you just have to change the process. Maybe you have to eliminate things away, take away stuff, because it's not about invention, right? Innovation is different. So you could just say, get rid of this stuff. This was stuff back then. We just did it because back then we thought we needed it. Now we know we don't need it. Why not just remove these things? So I think that's something that we have to kind of dare ourselves to basically do in terms of step back and ask ourselves, why is this still the way? Can't it be different? And that's what design thinking allows you to do, have some kind of radical thinking and radical collaborations to be more action oriented rather than writing papers and theses and that never go anywhere if you don't put it into the hands of the actual people. Now, I've been yapping about for 30 minutes. Let's basically see how much you learned. All right, so we're going to make this interactive again. Here's a situation with this little girl in this particular context. The question is, what does this kid need? Anyone wants to give it a try? What do you think she needs?
A ladder?
A ladder, okay. Anybody else?
A shorter shelf?
A shorter shelf, okay.
Guys, anyone?
Come on, doctors. Norman, your video's on. Turn on the mic. Tell me, what do you need? What does this kid need?
A step stool?
Step
She
stool?
needs to grow up.
She needs a, who was that? Who is so evil to say that? Terrible, terrible.
Someone mentioned parents or taller buddy.
Oh, online books. Very smart. Shorter shelves too. Okay. Okay. All right. So we've seen. So hence why the whole process, right? So design thinking again makes you pause and reflect. First question you should ask is why? Why is she in this situation? If you don't ask the question why, what everyone did was gave me a solution, right? You straight away jump to the conclusion saying, I'm a doctor, sorry, I know what she needs. She needs a stool, she needs to be taller, she needs a Kindle, she needs la da 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 da. All the solutions you gave me. Everyone has always solutions. But when you're trying to figure out needs, think about this. What if you don't use nouns for the needs and use verbs? So give me an action, right? So if I ask the question again, don't give me nouns. So stool, leather, ebook, all those are nouns. Give me verbs. What does she need?
He needs to jump.
She needs to jump. She needs to action. She needs to reach, right? What else?
She definitely needs to read. That's why she's getting the book.
Yeah. But then does she really need to read? That's the thing, right? We don't know because we didn't speak to her. All of us are making assumptions just because we saw this photo itself. And that's the limitation of information you have, and you're all jumping to conclusions. What happened to our scientific process that we learn in school, right? When you basically do stuff like this. So that's the same thing building products today, right? And this differentiates good products and great products. The key thing is if she needs to reach, and that's the problem statement, we're defining it. She needs to be able to reach so that she can read. Then I can say, come up with different solutions. Now, all of you gave me products that we had to go and buy or go and make or find in the house. But it could have been, again, something innovative in terms of making it simple. What if it's just a process change? What will be a process change here?
She can just, it's a bit unsafe, but she can, put, climb the second shelf, the lower shelf.
Yeah. Okay. Or we could just tell everyone at home, like, her books, please put it on the lower shelf. So she does not have to basically reach. No products needed, no stools, no letters, no nothing itself. So we always need to always kind of remind ourselves to ask the question why and whether we have all the data. In this specific situation, it could have been a completely different context. Hence why the insights we have, whether it's very strong signals that tell us why, or weak signals that we know why, and you can get stronger as we roll our sleeves and go down to the ground and find out. Imagine this situation, right? This little kid is not even in a house. Imagine she's gone out with her folks and they're at a friend's house that they haven't seen in a while. Now the parents are busy mingling, chatting, having a little drinks in the other room. What does she need? She needs attention, right? She's just trying to get daddy and mommy to basically notice her. So what if she's doing this deliberately? Because there's no way she's going to read that specific book. Because if she just wanted an advanced book, there's many different advanced books even in lower shelves. She puts herself in danger because she wants mommy and daddy to see her in danger. Someone said that, like, it looks pretty unsafe. And then they go, oh, sorry, let me come to you and help you with this. And then she gets what she needs. She just wanted attention. She wanted someone to speak to. She wanted mommy and daddy back. You didn't need a stool. You didn't even need a process to rearrange the books. But you never know till you look into the insights. So for this specific situation, which is real, what was built for this use case was a wearable device. Was a wearable device that was it had like an accelerometer and a gyroscope that the kid wears, same things that we have in elderly today. They can detect potential falls or actual falls. So when it's in a certain axis that she's basically standing, it sends an alert to the parent to say in the phone saying, look at your kid in danger of falling. And then you basically run to them. That was built. Not even a ladder, not even a stool, not even a process change of moving the books. So from a picture like this, you could build so many different things, but the context is, how much can you see? How much do you know? And that's the power of design thinking, why you learn this superhero skills, right? It's so powerful in the right hands. So now when you talk about defining the problem statements, I want to show you what problem statements basically look like, but we call them POVs. It's very different in this world, right? The POV has to be something that's meaningful, something that can be taken action on, right? So it can't be something generic. It can't be something about an organization. It has to be very human-centric, as in the customer, the person itself. And when it defines the right challenge, then it gives you an understanding of what are we trying to do here, why are we trying to solve something, and the extent of the purpose, why, and what we're trying to solve. Very different. I'll give you an example, right? So to construct a POV, three things. You need to know about the user, in this case, the little girl. You need to know about the need. She needs attention of her parents. The insights is because every time they go out, they neglect her and she just hates going out with them, right? So what could you build for that? So many different things. But if you break it down into these three things and looks at examples of defining it, it could be very surface level, but you could peel back layers, ask right questions, and go really deep. Let's try one. So in this case, I could say, I have a user that's a teenager. They need to eat healthy food. The insights is, of course, by having the proper nutrients, it is necessary for physical and cognitive health and development. You could build things along with this, whether it's a campaign to go into schools and teach them how to eat healthy, or just different kind of product ways to make healthy food more accessible. There's so many things you could basically build with this. But this is something, like I say, it could be an okay average company will say this is what matters to us. This is the problem that we're basically trying to solve. An actual company that's very different, that basically becomes great and makes us go like, why didn't we think of that? Because they peel back layers, would define this very differently itself, right? So you don't just talk about teenagers, because teenagers are so wide. Male teenage, female teenage, what specific? So if you go deeper, you could say a brilliant example would be, specifically, I'm saying a year 9 girl at a new school, right? So very specific. A girl in a new school. What does she need? Of course, she needs to eat healthy, but she needs to feel socially accepted when eating healthy food. Because, you come with a box of greens. My son likes to eat carrots. He loves vegetables. He takes vegetables and carrots to school as snacks, and the other kids just laugh at him. And now he doesn't want to take vegetables to school. It's like everyone doesn't eat that. They only eat crackers and cookies and sugar stuff. I'm trying to make him eat healthy, and the other kids are not helping us with that. So similar context, right? So the need is they need to feel like socially accepted when eating healthy food. The insights. So this is when you pull back the layers and shows what do you understand from data, from the person, from the interviews and ground speaking to people. In her crew, as in her clique, in school, a social risk is more dangerous than a health risk. So I would rather say, even though you gave me carrots, I'll flush it down the drain, throw it somewhere, because I don't want to be caught eating that, because my social status at school is way more higher than me eating healthy at all. So when you try and solve for this problem statement compared to the first one, they're worlds apart. The solutions are very much night and day different. And this is what design thinking teaches you, when you actually say, do you truly know your customer? Do you truly know the reason why, their purposes, their motivations, their thoughts, the emotions? You go down to that level of detail, you build a totally different product. And that's the skill sets that we want to teach you in this program, so that you look at the world very differently after this. And you come up with such amazing different approaches on how you can make things different. And that's the whole purpose of the challenge. So design thinking, 5-step process, right? Empathy, gathering all the information from the customer through interviews, observation, firsthand experience, because you were on the ground. Defining the actual problem that needs to be solved by being more specific and articulate in terms of the user, the needs, the insights around it. How do you get to the insights? That's the one that's a bit hardest, of course. And then you ideate. Then you come up with as many ideas as possible. Blue skies, right? The crazy, the bold, the new, the low cost, high cost, who cares? Just put it all out there. And then you can eventually prioritize and figure out what are quick wins I can do right now if I have to prove to someone something really quick. Or how do I have big bets that could basically be really huge, but a lot of costs? It'll take me time to get there, but can I do it surely, slowly, but surely, but get to the big bet? So how would you do that? You build, increments iteratively. You become prototypes. You put something small in someone's hands, you see feedback, and then you build upon it, you build upon it, you build upon it. And that whole prototype and test usually comes hand in hand, because as you build something, you want people to test. Now, this is the basic challenge that most people face, right? Saying, does this work for everything? How do I do this in healthcare? How do I do this in deep tech? How do I do this in finance? How do I get something just right I can put into people's hands that will be enough to test? And what if I'm not licensed? I don't have regulators behind me, and then nothing ever gets built until the tech people build it, because they basically live and breathe this particular process, right? So it's not impossible, it might be challenging, but there are always steps to basically do this small, quick wins to get towards something really big. And that's the whole art of problem solving. So I want to talk to you about one of these companies. So this is one of our new investments. We've invested in a few health tech companies locally. There's one called QMed that basically does queue management, and it worked out, right place, right time, because of the pandemic. Every mega vaccine center was basically using theirs. We've got something in Singapore called Elite Fit, and also Rebi. So Rebi is used as Class A product to get into hospitals. We just signed a deal with the community hospitals in Singapore. We've got Johnson and Johnson backing this up, coming in and helping us, etc. But to get there, to become a Class A product in the rehab physio space, although it will say it's less, what's the word, is not, it's a bit more easier than getting a full-blown healthcare typical product that could affect patients' lives. This would be a little bit more less risk, you could extensively say, but it's still something that doesn't mean you can just get into every hospital, every clinic, and just get it out to production. So it was something that had to come out of a certain purpose, a reason, and then had the motivation to basically see it through. So Rebi was founded by a founder called Lincoln. He's Australian, lives in Singapore. It was based on a certain personal experience and family need. So family was visiting his family. Mother had a severe stroke. She struggled to basically go through physiotherapy sessions, frequently missed her sessions, and it really slowed down her recovery process. So realizing, mom had an issue, he wanted to solve for this, but knowing that as she goes to rehab and see how many people were basically having such issues, there's a bigger picture here for people that are at risk of this, right? Of not having the recovery process as sufficient and painless as possible. So how do you basically solve for something like this? So of course, when he first wanted to begin, so before even getting here, he realized like, ooh, wow, I can't even build something like this, no matter what it looked and felt like, and take it to a hospital, especially in Singapore. Singapore is saying, no data, no play, right? Get us data. If not, this ain't happening. So he built something quite rudimentary, right? So there was a therapist app in terms of the physiotherapist to basically saying, what task are you trying to do? What task you want your patient to do? And the patient had an application to basically show them, okay, this is how you do this specific exercises, and they only did like 5 to 6 exercises, kept it really small, and they wanted to basically put this into a little bit of hospitals, a little bit of centers that basically could get them the data, but was kind of stopped in their tracks saying this ain't going to be used in a hospital context. So he had to figure out how to basically get access to data a little bit more quicker. So what was interesting was unable to pilot this in Singapore. They leverage an NGO. Well, NGO-like, right? This is called Reach 52. Interesting little get-up in Singapore that basically talked about how do you get health technologies into the 52% of the people that don't have access to such services itself. So they were working in quite remote areas, trying to bring technology to a certain set of segments of the market itself. So in this case, remote villages in Philippines. And they actually had an accelerator program that, so coincidentally, he joined and he got access to saying that we will help you take your prototype and test it with a few patients in this particular remote village. In this case, it was about 15 patients. And this was great, right? The pilot ran for about 3 months and you got actual people basically using this and giving feedback, realizing that the tech wasn't that stable because this sensor was like a Bluetooth device. You've got all kinds of different Android phones you connect to. It wasn't seamlessly connecting. Bluetooth has a little bit spotty. It's not the best experience. People were unsure about how to use the sensor because he had different sensors that you had to wear on the upper body and lower body, right? To basically make it simpler for the exercises to know the regime was done correctly. The app just took too many clicks. to basically, set up an exercise or create a patient. But again, doesn't matter, right? You just build something rudimentary, you put it out there. In this case, just a simple application that showed you how to do the exercises, simple animations, and a simple data entry screen of saying, what are they trying to basically do? Just to get some data to see whether are they doing it right or not. So we ran this for 3 months, and they had quite enough of data to basically show that there are rooms for improvement. And some of the interesting things they found out was, one, if they were to take this specific app and take it into a hospital, most places were saying, yo, we don't do apps. We're not going to basically go download an app and have our physiotherapists use it. That particular part, which is the physio, the hospital side, had to be a system within the premises and not belonging to the patient itself. So we needed a separate site. So that led to them then realizing, oh, I didn't know that. Let's go build the web portal for the therapist that they could use on their own specific networks itself. The patient application had issues that we had to solve, and so did the census. So in terms of the app, it became a nice little therapist web portal, bit more real-time or near real-time analytics that you could basically use, but use on their own devices in terms of the desktop computers, because they couldn't use the app. They were not allowed to use the app. People found that, even trying to understand the exercises was a bit more confusing. They didn't understand the terminology. So we just had to use better words, but also show imageries in terms of what the exercises were basically doing. So again, we got to prototype and iterate and put it out there and test it with them again. And then even have indicators in terms of the sensors, arrows pointing up, arrows pointing different directions, saying this is for the chest, this is for the ankle. So people weren't confused. Again, as we build the product, we assume everyone's going to know where to put the sensors again, because the developer always assumes, I built it this way, people will definitely use it this way, and they don't. So we had to make some corrections on that. And then that 15 patients in Philippines that gave us that constant data helped us get enough data to kind of prove that, hey, this can basically supplement physiotherapists. We had good data to show things were getting better. The way they basically used it was improved. And we could come back to Singapore and try and find a hospital that would give us a chance. So as we tried to do that, working with community hospitals, etc., just on our own, speaking with the more elderly people there, we always got feedback on how to make the app a little bit more better. So in this case, it was too clunky, it was too busy, it confused patients, and we built a very much cleaner application as it is today, and I'll show you a screenshot of that. But the key thing is just being able to go to Philippines and get this remote data from there allowed us to come back to Singapore and start growing the user base. And eventually, it started with 1 and then 2, and then eventually we had some nice community pilots and had over 30 people. And every day new people will show up to basically say, oh, I want to try this out. I heard about this. They got covered on CNA Channel News Asia. So you basically got the word out there. And they worked on a couple of things that one of the hospitals called Ng Teng Fong General Hospital gave us access to. Knee osteoarthritis was one of the first things we worked on, because from a programming perspective, there are not many axes that your knees can bend in. So programming that was quite simple. And we found that the highest workload in terms of staff in the hospital was for that issue. A lot of people had the issues. They're always bogged down. So the success criteria would be, could we get it to the point then the patients didn't have to come to the clinic or the hospital for such treatment? They could do it at home, and the hospitals found they were comfortable just doing like 15-minute Zoom calls with them and reducing the load of their particular staff and them, as in them, the patients, not needing to come in at all for physio sessions, right? So it lifted the burden of everyone. You didn't have to travel. If you're in discomfort, why make that journey itself, right? So that was pretty cool how it started with a pain point of a customer, which came from mom, and then he saw there was a bigger segment around it, defined the way to make this a little bit better, put out a simple idea of a sensor and a phone that basically tells you if you're doing your physios correctly, iterating it with the prototype, putting into customers' hands and iterating that over and over again, right? Today, I mean, you can go online and find Rabbi Health and see these videos. Now the app looks so plain and simple, right? Something simple as this. As you put the sensor on your leg, you see the band on a thigh, you just do your particular exercises after a knee operation, and it shows a nice real-time video of you doing it along with it. So as you move your leg, the video would basically move to, and it tells you, okay, hold for 4 seconds and repeat that. So you could do it on your own. Once you memorize it, you just put the phone on the side and you have the audible alerts to tell you if you're doing it right or wrong. Someone could basically guide you. So the key was you could train someone else at home if an elderly person that was not able to hold the devices or put it together could do this with help at home rather than the physiotherapist always on site that basically did that itself. Today, they have quite a nice little ecosystem in terms of the web portal that's used in the hospitals, a beautiful app and sensor that goes out to all the particular patients. Hospitals are buying the sensors in the thousands. We're working with insurance companies. We're working with the likes of Johnson & Johnson that is trying to get this approved as, Class A medical devices, approved from a cybersecurity standpoint. The government puts a seal of approval, so the devices are safe. The hospitals feel like it's okay to work with such stuff and even get up to ISO status. And we invested in this to help them then kind of scale this to more patients, more sessions, more hospitals, more clinics. But the thing is, they don't just start saying, I need to get it perfect before I go to all these hospitals. They find ways to just start and never think they're going to get it right straight off the bat. But the customers, if they think you're building something compelling, are always going to basically, give you insights and input to see how you can make their lives, a better thing, right? So if you're solving the right things and people care for the product, they're not going to just tell you, oh, it doesn't work. They're going to tell you why it doesn't work and how they want you to make it work. I think that's the key thing we see when you solve for the right problems, for the right segments, and for the right reasons itself. To the point now, they've got nice money from government grants, the good grants that supported them, that trusted them, and now we're trying to commercialize them even further and raise bigger amounts itself. But again, the process to start and to get investors to even think about investing in something so early, to buy into it and believe they could pull it off, is because they have that structured approach. You feel like, wow, this person has figured out how to start something that just sounds impossible in little steps itself. So today you can read about them. They mention in ministerial speeches on how Rebi is basically helping the Singapore community hospitals build such solutions internally at scale that really reduce manpower needed to basically give more people access to better recovery processes itself. Great story. And it all is because of the whole process of design thinking, right? When you stick with empathy first, it really makes you focus on what we call human values, where you put yourself in the customer's shoes and really figure out why, how can I make this experience better? It allows you to think a little bit more radically when you start to collaborate, like, oh, I can't get into hospital in Singapore. It's not the end. You think about who can I work with to make this happen, to get this particular data sets. It's about crafting the clarity. What do we need in terms of telling people what we have and the data to basically get to the next steps? What do you need to do in Philippines? What do you need to get for success criteria to basically explain to Singapore hospitals that this basically would make sense? And then just being able to embrace experimentation. It's not about writing papers and theses, right? We had to roll up our sleeves and just build something. I mean, I admit, we showed you the screenshots. We're proud to show you. It didn't look amazing at all. It's ugly. There's even a saying, right? If your first prototype, your first launch doesn't look good, then it's great. If it looks good, you waited too long for it, right? Just ship something. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to work. And just being biased towards actions. So it's all about action oriented. And hence why you see a lot of corporates now bring people like us in and talk about innovation, especially leveraging things like design thinking, because they are so analysis paralysis most of the times, right? Two departments in a large organization sometimes don't even talk to each other. So with this, they speak to the customers, they understand the reason why, they collaborate between departments that will never speak to each other. They learn how to articulate this at clarity itself in terms of focus. This is the problem. This is what we have to solve. Try to just come up with a quick experiment, and being so action-oriented, iteratively developing rather than just keep writing papers after papers and board papers itself. So when you go to the board now and you show them data with your specific implementation methods, it's data back. How does someone turn away evidence when you're saying this is what we got to do and this is why we need a budget to basically see this through, rather than just writing about it, you're showing about it itself. So I think that's the key thing with design thinking, right? It's going to get you a shorter time from idea to implementations. Eventually, I guess you'd save money in terms of these smaller experiments, as they keep saying, fail fast. That means you do something really cheap, try it out, it's not it, tweak it, tweak it, tweak it, instead of spending too long to build something that may not be right after all. And to go back so many versions, so much implementation, it's a waste of time and effort. Solving problems in a more complex that are more complex in a more simplistic manner because you're taking it chunks at a time. And eventually, because it just experiment and keep moving and moving on and moving forward, it creates this great motivation in a team, and we feel productive. Like, I can see that we're approaching the finish line. Most of the times when we start this huge, crazy transformation projects, we're like, where are we even towards that end goalpost, right? You don't even know if you're halfway there, midway, or a quarterly there. You have no idea. And hence why people just give up saying, yeah, it'll never work because we never ever get anything done. So by having this increment baby steps, it just gets everyone more motivated. So expectation versus reality. Although I talk about this sequence, it looks like that as I present the iterations we had, but it more felt like this in terms of getting from the beginning till the end. It felt like go back to the drawing board, back to the drawing board sometimes. But eventually, you know your true north and where you're basically hitting, and specifically why you're hitting there. And I think that's basically what we want to talk about today, right? Design thinking, process on how to solve problems. The key thing is put yourself in someone's shoes, pause before you jump to conclusions and come up with ideas. Always ask yourself why and what's their point of view? Who's the user? What do they need? And do you know some insights around why those needs are real? That's what basically is a challenge that's worth solving. And we hope to hear such things from you in the upcoming program. All right, that's me. If there's any questions, I'll take it now. If not, back to you, Dr. Selina.
Hey, Bikesh. Oh my God, thanks for that. That was, I think, one of the best talk on design thinking I've listened to. It's very, very insightful.
Thank you.
So guys, anyone has any question for Bikesh? Okay. All right. So maybe I have some questions. Okay, Bikesh, I know you're a seasoned entrepreneur and you've also contributed quite significantly to the startup scene for more than a decade, right?
Mhm.
So can you give us some insights into why innovation is so important and how this H-Innovator challenge can drive innovation in healthcare?
Yeah, so that's the thing, right? When it comes to certain sectors, certain things are very difficult for an outsider to figure it out. So eventually, the only one that figures it out is someone with so much resources to buy their way into these insights. So with a program like this, the key is all of you having your day to day. That's definitely things that always make you go, why am I doing this way? So to just learn the skill sets where you could be that person without much resources needed to figure out, is this worth solving? Is there something bigger here if we were to solve it right? And what could that look and feel like, right? To have that superpower, as we call it, with this process to solve for that, I think that's why you want to basically take this whole program. And that's what innovation is about, right? It's for the ones who just basically say, yeah, just because it's always been the way doesn't mean it should be the way. And I dare to think of a different method. And we want to, the fact that you're all on this call on a Monday night at 9 o'clock, want to listen to this person talk about design thinking, it shows me that you're not the average person out there, the average doctor, the average medical personnel. And I think I truly want to hear, what is it that you all experience day to day that you always think that there's got to be a better way?
Okay, so Bikesh, I mean, throughout the presentation, you mentioned the early adopters, and the innovators and early adopters. I think there's maybe some misconception what innovation is and what invention is. Maybe you can enlighten the audience, like what exactly the difference is.
Yeah, so I guess innovation is just about, making something bigger, faster, better, cheaper, those kind of aspects. But it doesn't necessarily have to be new. But the fact that I mean, the term we always, or the magnitude we always use is 10x. if I made it 10 times bigger, 10 times faster, 10 times more efficient, it's such a magnitude that it feels new, but it's not new. Like Apple didn't invent a smartphone. The smartphone was already there. They didn't create a touch phone, it was already there. There was already Microsoft that had such things. But what they did was innovate the whole process of what the experience was for an operating system to be on a 4-inch screen of that nature itself. They didn't take something that they basically had. They thought about improving the current operating system they have and build it ground up for mobile. That means better communication, better battery optimization, better connectivity, better everything. What Microsoft did was kind of take their Windows and shrink it to a 4-inch screen. Apple had Apple OS 10, but didn't shrink it to 4 inches. They made iOS a whole complete thing. So I think that's what innovation is, right? It's not just about creating brand new or brand new at all. It could be the process of just eliminating, reducing, improving from a 10x model. I think that's a quantum that if you could think how to do something 10x better, that's what innovation are defined as. When you say 10 times cheaper, I mean that's sometimes it's risky to do that because if you're just fighting on price, then everyone can basically do the same. If you can find a cheaper operating model, then that's still better. But don't just talk like cheap. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it's not really about the price, but the value of it, right? Yeah. Okay, someone has a question here. What are the aspects an investor look for before investing into a new idea? How can they be sure whether the idea could be feasible in the future?
Yeah, so the key thing you always look at is that I think I showed you that chart earlier, right? There's always the desirability. How do we know people want this? I mean, people needs to want or need this thing first, right? So do you have evidence of that? So depending, I mean, most investors, they know what they're looking for from a sector perspective. They mostly have a shopping list. Asia might be a little bit more easier sometimes to say that, oh, we can see what the Americans and Europeans have, and you could just wait for something to come out here so you could sell it to them. But sometimes there's something more nuanced here, and it only comes out here fast. So first part is always, is this idea worth solving, right? Is this desirable? Then when it talks about, yes, it's worth it, but is it a great business or is this a hobby or just a fun thing? So we talk about the viability. How big could it be? So what's the size of this worldwide? And what's the size of it where you are right now? And this gives you an aspect of, can the found, like if it's strictly Malaysia, right? Sometimes you could say the market for certain things could be too small. So the person better be able to think of building a solution that could get out of Malaysia also quite fast. So we're talking about the viability in that aspect. And third one is, of course, then the feasibility, like you basically talked about, right? Is this feasible? Can you pull this off? So that's where the team is quite important. And sometimes for an early stage company, this could be the one that matters most above everything. Because I can't just get a fresh graduate to come and say, I'm going to build this healthcare innovation. I'm like, what do you even know about the process? If it's something that, one size fits all, everybody experiences healthcare from a, I am sick of waiting in line and queuing system, fine. You may not need to be someone within the realm to solve that. Someone outside could basically do that. But if it's something that needs, inside experience, then the key thing is the team. Do you have the right team to pull this off? If you don't have the right team to pull this off, I'm going to pay you to hire them. I could pay anyone to hire them and do it itself. So what investors want to see is how to get a bang for my buck. I give you X dollar, you could basically make that, X times $4 itself in terms of value.
Okay, Bikesh, just now you did mention whether the market is big enough. So is it important to niche down?
So there's two things, right? It has to be big to be something venture capital will care about if you're looking for investments, but then it has to be niche down to say where you start. Because you're not going to start by saying it's a global solution that every hospital in planet would use. Don't want to believe that. It could be eventually something everyone use, like Ravi Health, right? Every physio center, the term would be global physio rehab, right? But what I want to know is the word we use is what's the SOM? What's obtainable to you in your current state, in your current resources now? So steady state, how big could you be in the next 12 months? And that's when you basically, figure out, if I give you money and resources, could we then accelerate that further? But if the SOM is, very small, it's like, oh my goodness, it takes so long to basically complete someone, to basically convert enterprise sale, etc. It's not like it's impossible to raise money, but people might say, you go prove it first. Go close a few more, and let me see if this is even something that can be something bigger itself, right? So they'll be quite hesitant to work on things that are too small or it's too hard to close.
Okay, I guess that makes a lot of sense. Do you see, I mean, you're now looking at investing into healthcare innovation. Do you see any particular trends in the area that in healthcare that's exciting or impactful right now?
Um, well, we're looking across the entire value chain of healthcare, right? So how do you go from, A to Z, upstream to downstream if you want? So there's many different things. I think one that we saw suddenly kind of sprouting everywhere was things around aged care. I think as we become more of an aging nation, so is our counterparts in the neighboring countries, some markets like maybe Taiwan, Korea, Japan, severely there already. There is a push for solutions within the space. Of course, it could be very service oriented, like what most people are doing. There's this new elderly daycare centers and retirement villages. But what people are looking for now is, the technologies to support that. How do we do that? The harder ones will, of course, be things around preventive care. I think it's sad that most of the things that Malaysians die from are all kind of preventative, if I'm not mistaken, from what I read. What are we doing about that, right? How do we basically solve for that? One in two obesity is quite bad already. Are there things we could do around that? But how much of that is technology versus something else, policies, procedures? So everyone's curious and looking for that. But lately, we've been seeing a lot of devices take shape and form. People are looking into healthcare related devices. I guess as people want to see how I could have my own concierge with me all the time, that's in a form of a device that understands me, personalizes to me. So we're seeing some elements within that too.
Okay. So what about those doctors who think like maybe I have an idea, but I'm not sure about it. Maybe it's not that great. Like what would you advise them?
Well, the idea is you got to seek out someone to bounce these ideas with, right? And that's the dilemma that most innovators have, most business owners have. You need someone to speak these things to. If not, it's just going to be left for dead or just left at the back of your mind saying, I'll come back to this later. But when you have the right support, the right kind of people around you to kind of like build upon that, you say one thing, we say one thing plus another thing, and we could see like, oh my God, maybe that was the missing piece I had, but we will never know until you tell us those things. Hence why your event, right? The upcoming conference where you can come and meet like-minded people that can talk about the possibilities of you building things together. And also this challenge, if you just take part and tell us your idea. I mean, worst case, we'll help you evaluate to say, like, maybe there's nothing there. At least you know. But what if there was something there? Of course, you'll say you don't have time. But if something was truly there, maybe we could find other people to figure that out because it's worth it, but it's just trapped in you. I know they say ideas are nothing, but the fact is we don't even know what that idea is, right? So how do we surface that and make it into something? So I think it just starts with a program like this, kind of writing an email to me or Dr. Selina and saying, I want to do this. Tell me how. Do you know anyone else who talked about this? Yeah, so you got to start with that.
Oh, that's great actually, because like, actually I think years ago I wished like I came across something like this because many years ago I had this idea. I mean, with Disruptive Doctors, right? It was like in 2018, 2019, I had this idea. Maybe I want to build this platform where doctors can connect. Everyone I asked in my circle, they told me it was a dumb idea. Like, don't do it. I don't think there's anything out of it. But I went ahead with it. I was like, no, I think I'm just gonna test it out. And before you know it, like here I am. I have a co-founder, we have a team. People started reaching out to us. We have over like 4,000 doctors on our database. Like, so I mean I can totally resonate with that. It's like it's an idea. You may not know what's out there until you actually just put it out there, right?
Yeah, so that's why same thing with that user graph, right? You just sell to mainstream, you talk to mainstream, they go like, what are you wasting your time? Just be a doctor. If you talk to the other innovators, the other early doctors, they go like, oh my God, that sounds great. And then you make it into something when it just kind of snowballs on each other, right?
Yeah, that's true. Okay, so for those of you who don't know what this H-Innovator Challenge is, I'll just break this down to you. So there will be, I think, 1 or 2 weeks of self-learning. It will be all content from Bikesh and 1337, where you have access to resources and materials to help you shape this idea. And at the end of this 1, 2 weeks, you will submit your pitch idea to us. We will look through and see which is the viable idea. Bikesh, his team, my team, we will look through it, and we will then find we will then filter, and from there you guys will be paired with mentors who will help you refine your pitches. And then after that, the finalists will get a chance to pitch at our Healthcare Revolution conference. This is a highly coveted conference, is very highly anticipated among doctors. If you're a non-healthcare professional, this is a great place for you to throw your ideas out there, get some medical doctors or the healthcare side to be on, because I think the last thing, like what Bikesh said, idea that is worthless, right? Like nobody wants it and it's not applicable. So this is a good way, good place for you actually to validate your idea, especially as someone who asked, how do you know if this is feasible, right? So maybe Bikesh, you can elaborate a bit, like what are the resources that 1337 have that will help all these participants to turn this idea into solution and bring it forward?
Yeah. So I guess the key thing is the know-how, right? Like how you truly get ideas to become products. We've been doing this for over a decade. We've got over what 60, 70 investments, and we have exits. So we kind of have seen all the iterations of how things can go wrong and things can go right. So it's about giving you the playbook and kind of pointing you in the right directions to validate those ideas. How do you basically go and speak to customers? How do you go and do your qualitative and quantitative studies? How do you basically then think about product roadmap, go to market, the sizing, actually create the pitch, put you in front of potential angels and investors to see whether what do other people think. So I think we give you all that know-how in terms of going from 0 to possibly 1, but the rest is all you, right? The actual, I mean, you can do this all on paper, depending how much you want to participate and actually do the work. But the execution is you. So giving you the resources so you don't have to say, I don't know what I don't know. We've got the entire playbook how to go from here to there. It's just you following the script and saying, okay, this is next, this is next. I mean, never had it, no one had it this easy this way, right? Back then, when we first started, everybody had to figure it out. And now, with the power of information, you have it. Doesn't mean like, oh, you need to go figure out your own. Why would you? When people have got ways to basically go faster, go the distance faster, you leverage it, right? So we are here to show you, and we've got investors and other startups in the space to also kind of be able to help you validate that, saying, oh, I've been looking for something like this, or this is how we basically built QMed. This is how we built Revi Health. This is the conversations with doctors that work and don't work. This is how we got the government to allow us in. You have all this kind of information at your fingertips through us. All you just have to do is tell us the idea you want to work on, and the rest is we'll make it happen.
Okay, Bikesh, I have one question. What if our participants feel like, okay, I want to build this idea. I have an idea, I want to build it, but I don't want to be in front of people. I don't want to be talking about it. I want to do it behind my keyboard. What do you have to say to this kind of people?
I mean, not everyone is that, right? Like, look at Steve Wozniak. He needed a Steve Jobs. So did, Bill Gates had a Steve Ballmer. So that's why you need a team. No one said that you have to be the one standing on stage basically pitching it. You just have to put it together and then find someone else that does that. Although people love hearing it from the founder, but it's still the founding team. So I think those little things can be solved. Let's just get the first thing going first, which is it even worth thinking about finding a co-founder in the first place? So you have no idea, right? So don't think too far. Think about the first steps. Apply.
Okay, yeah, that's a good advice, because I think when I first started, I wanted to make this work from behind the keyboard. I didn't want to put my face out there anywhere.
And look
Then
at you now.
yes, quite ironic. Now I'm on YouTube. I'm on every single platform, like going out there, sharing this idea, getting people on board. It took quite a big of a mindset shift
Yeah. No,
to.
sometimes it's just because you have that imposter syndrome and you think like maybe I really don't know what I'm talking about. So when it's validated and you have the data to back you and you have people like us saying this is amazing and we want to basically work with you, I think then you get the confidence, and because you have the know-how in terms of what needs to be articulated. Because right now you're blank, right? What would I even say? But we're going to give you the tools of knowing what to say and when to say what. So you put that together and you go on stage and do it. I mean, if you could operate on someone and be in healthcare, I think that's more, I would freak out with that more than getting on stage and talking.
Yep. So guys, any more questions for Bikesh? I mean, anything you want to ask him, you can ask him now before we wrap up. Uh, So while we wait for last minute questions, I want to remind everyone to get your tickets to the Healthcare Revolution Conference that's happening on 10th and 11th of August at SDCC. This is where doctors are impacting healthcare differently. And it's a perfect place for you to network, learn, and get inspired by one of the brightest minds in healthcare and technology. We'll keep the link in the description. And Bikesh will be there as well. He'll be sharing insights. There's going to be doctors who've been innovating who will be there as well. So yeah, guys, any last questions? Okay, so what about you, Bikesh? Any last words for
I mean,
our
I'm just
audience here?
curious if anybody is just willing to kind of turn on their microphones, maybe even leave the video off and tell me about an idea you have in the field. I'd love to hear some right now. Anybody willing?
Hi, good evening.
Oh, there we go. Hey, Glenn.
Hi, Bikesh. Hi, Selina. Thank you for an amazing time. My background is I'm an ENT surgeon. So I've been thinking about making a simple device, a medical device, for wound management.
Hmm.
Basically, the problem with wound care, many of times is that we need to do dressings, wound dressings, and then we need to do the desloughing, basically removing the dead tissues from the wound. But the problem with the disposable devices that we have or that is provided in the hospitals, they don't really have a good grasp of the tissue, the forceps, for example, or the tools that are provided are not really, it's not easy because we have to use different devices to enable us to do the job. So I'm thinking of like a one simple solution, a simple device that comprises of all the elements that are required, and it's disposable. So it's, how would I say, we don't have to sterilize it, we don't have to reuse it.
Best part is
And
people have to keep buying it, so that's even better.
yeah,
Nice
exactly. So in
consumable.
a consumer point of view, yeah.
So I think you even have that disposable scalpels, and it's a huge thing in that space also right now, right? So I know a factory in Penang that's basically the guys used to work for B Brown, and then they were making this, and then they saw how much money they were making, and then they just left and they made their own little factory now. These guys are swimming in cash creating this kind of med tech devices. So hey, that's possible, and I know the person that can even build this for you because that's what these people do, right? So yeah, amazing. We of course have to validate and see how many more people like you have that issue, and we'll see that as something they want to use. But the fact that if you could build it and you could use it and find other peers that want to use it, it's a bit more easier internally to find that early adopters compared to, imagine I'm an outsider. How do I even go find a Dr. Kuhan somewhere and saying, please test this? So you already have your ins, man, all of you. That's the power that you guys have and why you should be solving some of these things. So thank you for sharing that. Well done.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Anybody
Okay,
else?
anyone else? Okay, if there's no one else, then I guess we can call it a night. I hope to see you guys at the H-Innovators Challenge and our conference that's happening in August. Bikesh will be there. I will be there. Vivek will be there. There are going to be many forward-thinking doctors there for you to network with. Okay, so have a great night, everyone.
Thanks all.
Bye.
Bye.